Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. First of all, if you haven't checked out previous videos, make sure you do after this one as they go hand in hand regarding NHL free agency. I'll have a link right down here below for you towards the end of this video to check them out if you haven't already. But continuing what I first touched on a couple videos ago, there's plenty of uncertainty when it comes to the NHL free agency and the free agent market at the season's end, all in part because of the NHL season currently on pause due to the ongoing pandemic, of course. And how is this necessarily going to affect free agency? Well, of course, it's going to affect most likely one free agency happens in regards to the actual date, and most likely is not going to happen around July like it normally does. It probably will be later. And how is it going to affect the players, the bigger fish that are most likely going to hit the free agent market at the season's end? Well, what are the big fish exactly? When it comes to goaltending especially, you have to look at guys like Braden Holtby, who was back in 2015, 2016, as most of you would know by now, the Vezina Trophy winner for the Washington Capitals. And then, of course, after that, you have Robin Lehner, who has really become a number one goaltender over the past couple seasons, playing time with the Islanders last season, and then this season playing with the Chicago Blackhawks, to them being traded at the trade deadline a couple months ago to the Vegas Golden Knights. The story when it comes to Robin Lehner is great, all due to the mental battles that he has dealt with throughout his career and life overall, and how he has really overcome them and has become a very strong number one goaltender. And of course, the last guy I have as the big fish when it comes to goaltending will have to be Jacob Markstrom. Jacob Markstrom, of course, was coveted by many around a decade ago now as being a top goaltending prospect, as he was drafted high in his draft. But since then, really just hasn't panned out too much after splitting time between the Florida Panthers and the Vancouver Canucks. But this season with the Canucks, he finally figured things out and has proven to be a starter in the NHL. Regardless if he stays with the Canucks or hits the free agent market, I expect him to continue to be a starter for a couple more years at least. But who are the other goaltenders that could possibly hit the market? Well, you, of course, have Corey Crawford for the Chicago Blackhawks. You have Thomas Greiss from the New York Islanders. Cam Talbot, who has played a very strong season as kind of a resurgence in his career with the Calgary Flames. And then you have guys like Khudobin, who's been very solid as the backup for Ben Bishop, and Jaro Halak, who's been very solid as well, even though he's been a little up and down this season with the Boston Bruins, but he's up there in age as well. And then other guys, whether it be Mike Smith, who has proven to still be a reliable goaltender for the Edmonton Oilers, Craig Anderson, who is up there in age too, but has just been doing a decent job for the Senators when they've needed him to, and Jimmy Howard, who really had a terrible season, but that all goes in part with his age and the team he's playing for. The Red Wings are the worst team in the NHL for a reason, so take that as you will. Some of these guys may retire at the season's end, I'm not too sure, but I will be focusing on the top three like I've previously mentioned in this video. So starting off with Jacob Markstrom. Markstrom this season in 43 games played has 23 wins, 16 losses, and 4 overtime losses. Has a goals allowed average of 2.75, which is strong, and a save percentage of .918. He was really rolling up until he dealt with a significant injury not too long ago, and Thatcher Demko had to come in and really hold his own as being the starter, and he has not proven to be that guy night in and night out yet, but once he is, I fully expect the Canucks to ride him into the sunset because they know that Thatcher Demko is supposed to be their number one, their future. But in the meantime, Markstrom has played some very strong hockey for them, and I find it hard to believe that they won't try to keep him at the season's end, given how strong of a season he's had with them and the current state of the Vancouver Canucks, who are in a playoff push as we speak, but will be going forward. They look like a team that is only going to continue to get better as they have finally gotten out of this kind of rebuild, retool, whatever you may call it. But they have really made some strong moves the past couple of years and is finally showing. But Markstrom is a 30-year-old goaltender. He has a cap hit this season of $3.6 million, and I fully expect that cap hit to rise all the way to around 4.5 to 5, especially if he hits the free agent market. Because, of course, free agents, for the most part, are given raises, probably more deserving that they deserve, but that tends to happen when you're in the free agent market. You have to outbid other teams, so it makes sense why you may overpay a player. But when it comes to Markstrom, he deserves a pay raise, rightfully so, and I believe him to be a starter, or at least compete for a starting position, if not with the Canucks, then with another team at the season's end. So next on my list, of course, you have Braden Holtby. And actually, no, I'll do Braden Holtby last, but Robin Lehner. Robin Lehner is an awesome story. I've been a big fan of his for a while. Even with me as a Rangers fan, I really was feeling for him when he was playing with the New York Islanders, loving the fact that he really came into his own with his game, struggling in the NHL for quite a while now until he first came to the New York Islanders and really figured things out, not just for himself mentally, but with his overall game, and it has shown. He won the Bill Masterton Trophy last season with the New York Islanders, and this season with the Chicago Blackhawks was playing just fine and was a key contributor to their success and a lot of the reasons why they won games that they shouldn't have. I remember watching plenty of games with him this season when he had over 40 plus saves night in and night out and was keeping the Chicago Blackhawks in it when they had an abysmal defense, to say the least, at parts of the season. But since he's been dealt to the Vegas Golden Knights, he was doing just fine. But to assume that he will stay with them long term would be silly, given the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury still has 2 years left on his contract for Vegas. So I find that hard to believe that they would be able to keep Lehner, especially for his going cap hit, because I would expect it would be risen. But this season, Lehner, the 28-year-old goaltender, in 36 games played, has 19 wins, 10 losses, 5 overtime losses, a goals allowed average of 2.89, pardon me, and a save percentage of .920. So he has proven, not just this season, but last season, that he is one of the better goaltenders in all the NHL. Whether you have him as like a 1A, 1B tandem, or you really have him as the solidified starter, he will do a lot for you. And he still is in the point of his career where he is really in his prime. And I don't expect him to slow down really anytime soon. The fact that he isn't even 30 yet is going to look great for him if he hits the market especially. But then, of course, number one on this list when it comes to the biggest fish for goaltending set to hit free agency, and that is, of course, Braden Holtby, the 30-year-old goaltender for the Washington Capitals, originally drafted back in 2008, has really been the franchise for them when it comes to goaltending. Especially when you look at in 2015-2016 season, he had 48 wins, which was crazy. I believe only 9 regulation losses, and won the Vezina that season. And he has just shown that year in and year out, he has continued to get better and better, but the past couple seasons have not been great, especially this one. In 48 games played this season, he has 25 wins, 14 losses, 6 overtime losses, a goals allowed average of 3.11, and a save percentage of .897. Those are some of the worst stats he's had in all of his NHL career. So that just goes to show the kind of problem that he's having with the Capitals, along with the fact of them having a very young, promising goaltender who looks like he will be the next big thing for the Capitals, and that, of course, is Ilya Samsonov. I'm a big fan of his as well. I've done videos on him previously, so make sure you check them out if you haven't, if you're interested. But I think Samsonov is, with that question, going to be the future for the Capitals as soon as the next season. And if you look at the cap hit that Holtby currently has, it's 6.1 mil. Are they really going to want to even increase that when Holtby is most likely going to want somewhere between 7 mil plus for... He would love that Bobrovsky contract of 7 mil for 10 years. That ain't happening. But maybe 7 mil for 6 or 7 years. Who knows? But I don't see how the Capitals would let that happen when they still have a year left on Samsonov's contract before he's a restricted free agent with only a cap hit of $625K, I believe. So in the Capitals' mind, it seems best to let Holtby walk, and I think it would be best for both parties, especially if Holtby would like to get a significant raise in a long-term contract, the next big contract and last big contract of his NHL career, most likely. But when you look at teams that could possibly be interested in these players, for Holtby, I don't see him re-signing with the Capitals. I think it would be silly for them to do that. I know some Caps fans might disagree with me on that, but Samsonov is without question going to be the future for the Capitals, and rightfully so. And it would only make sense for them to save the cap and not worry about having to deal with a contract that is more than likely going to turn out bad sooner than later if they would re-sign Holtby to a long-term deal like that. So teams that I could expect that would be interested in Holtby are teams like the Buffalo Sabres. Make a lot of sense to me. They've been having goaltending issues and they need a number one goaltender. If Holtby is willing to go to a team like the Sabres that isn't in necessarily playoff mode yet, but they are getting closer and closer, I think that would be a strong move. And of course, you have to mention the Colorado Avalanche would be pretty funny as well, given the fact that they have Philip Grubauer, who was the backup for Holtby for numerous seasons, who I even saw play back when he was in the AHL for the Hershey Bears. It's crazy how much he's developed since then. But Grubauer's been a decent goaltender, but he has dealt with injuries, and I'm not sure how confident Joe Sakic is in the type of goaltenders that he has in Colorado. If him and Francouz will help get them over the top and ultimately winning a cup? Or will they need to bring in a guy like Holtby to really get the job done, especially come playoff time? So that's something to consider as well. Those are two teams that in my mind will be interested in Holtby if he hits the free agent market. When it comes to Lehner, though, I don't see how Lehner stays with Vegas either, especially with the cap issues that they already have, and they have plenty of teams retaining cap for them just for Lehner's contract alone, as he's a rental. But with that being said, teams I expect that Lehner may go to, or at least will be interested in him, are the Carolina Hurricanes, as they've been dealing with some goaltending issues between Peter Mrazek and James Reimer. They aren't bad goaltenders, but they do need a number one, and I don't know if either of them can really get them over that hump in playoffs, and I sure know that Lehner can. So that would make a perfect fit for them, in my opinion, especially the type of mentality and personality that Lehner has. I think that would work great with the kind of, storm surge, the thing that Carolina has had going on for, a year or two now. And also the Colorado Avalanche you have to consider again, because they have such great cap when it comes to this offseason, and they can really go in on any big fish for any position in the market, but it would make sense for them to check out at least one of these three goaltenders, so I had to consider Lehner in there as well. But then when it comes to Markstrom is a guy who, for the Canucks, I would expect them to really try to keep him. But in case they can't, expect him to stay in Canada, in my opinion. The Oilers would make a lot of sense, as they are needing a goalie that can be consistent for them and is still relatively young. That is Markstrom, unlike Mike Smith, who is really towards the latter years of his career, may retire as soon as the end of this season or next season, who knows, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Markstrom go to Edmonton or even go to Calgary. Who knows if they're going to keep Cam Talbot or what they're going to do with David Riddick. None of them are bad by any means, but I just feel like there's still uncertainty for goaltending when it comes to both of these teams in the Battle of Alberta, so it would not surprise me at all to see Markstrom walk for a bigger pay from one of those two teams. But with all that being said, that is going to conclude this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, if you agree or disagree with me on my thoughts and where these players will possibly go if they hit free agency, or if they don't hit free agency. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear it. But with all those things being said, make sure that you check out the other videos I have right down here below for you if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be back in a day or two.